Hey everybody, Jamie Starr here. I'm today going to do a video getting into the con artistry that is Stefan Molyneux and his reasons, logic, and evidence, which I am more apt to call ego, arrogance, and condescension. And to start this off, the first thing that I wanted to address was his response and misrepresentation of Tucker Carlson's debate with Ben Shapiro about driverless cars and how he completely misrepresents why socialism arises in societies. And then I'm going to get into how, while in the same breath he's portraying, Tucker's emotional arguments in this, which I hate to break it to Stefan, but humans aren't just emotionless like androids that can just process data and act accordingly to so, and he definitely isn't exempt from that. So I do think emotions should be taken into account, because emotions are what actually tend to make people act irrationally. So it would be very rational to account for emotions and what more often drives irrational behaviors. In my last podcast with Paul, I said, if you want to talk logically, well, to beat a dead horse, let's look at, Nazi Germany. Well, you had sections of the economy that people thought were acting against the best will of the German people. So you look at who's controlling those sections. Oh, well, it happens to be Jews. So, if the evidence points us to the Jewish section, Jewish-dominated sections of the economy acting against Germany, well, reason, logic, and evidence is, well, maybe we should extract and remove them from those sections of the German economy and eliminate them. See? If we emotionalized with how they would feel about this, well, reason, logic, evidence. Reason is they're acting against us. The evidence is they're the Jews. Logically, let's get rid of them. Why not? What reason do you have? Oh, their feelings? Fuck their feelings. Reason, logic, evidence. Right, guys? So, let's get into this Tucker thing. And then I have a bunch of other stuff because, I pulled up Steph's timeline when going through this stuff, and I found a lot of other inconsistencies, and just those inconsistencies being backed with appeals to authority and all of this other nonsense and just inconsistent stuff about his whole race IQ tear. If someone were to call Steph at this point a white supremacist, there isn't anything I could say to refute that, because he most definitely is, and that's apparent by the inconsistencies to his whole race IQ thing. You can't be like, well, race IQ, white people have the greatest societies, but I'm not a racist because the Jews and Asians have, higher IQs. So why don't the Jews and Asians have the better societies? Right? That's a pretty obvious, inconsistency with that whole way of, trying to say you're not a racist, but trying to, muddy those waters or whatever the fuck he thinks he's doing. So anyway, let's for context, which is one thing that Steph didn't bother to give us, let's actually watch what Tucker said.
If you wake up one morning and you find yourself in a society where 23-year-olds with 4-year college degrees and initiative who aren't smoking weed every day, if they can't make enough to buy a car, much less a home, much less get married, much less have children, then why should you be surprised when half of them say they prefer socialism? Well, you should not be surprised.
I agree to a certain extent. I think that the question is when the pedal hits the metal. You talk in the book about technology and how it's shifting and taking away jobs from folks. Yes. And you make specific reference to truck driving and the fact that there are going to be these automated cars on the roads. So would you, Tucker Carlson, be in favor of restrictions on the ability of trucking companies to use this sort of technology specifically to, sort of artificially maintain the number of jobs that are available in the trucking industry?
Are you joking? In a second. In a second. In other words, if I were president, when I say to DOT, the Department of Transportation, we're not letting driverless trucks on the road, period. Why? Really simple. Driving for a living is the single most common job for high school educated men in this country, in all 50 states. By the way, that's the same group whose wages have gone down by 11% over the past 30 years. The social cost of eliminating their jobs in a 10-year span, 5-year span, 30-year span is so high that it's not sustainable. So the greater good is protecting your citizens from, look, capitalism is the best economic system I can think of, I think that anyone's ever thought of. But that doesn't mean that it's a religion and everything about it is good.
No, but
there's no Nicene Creed of capitalism that I have to buy into. What I care about is living in a country where, you know, decent people can live happy lives, actually. And so, no, I would say, no, are you joking? And I maybe would make up some pretext for public consumption, like, oh, they're dangerous. The technology is not quite finessed. No. But the truth would be, I don't want to put 10 million men out of work because you're going to have 10 million dead families, and the cascading effect from that will wreck your country.
So I'm going to ask about the limiting principle there in just a second.
All right. So here we see, and you know, Tucker even mentions what my argument would be right off the bat is the dangers. They can be hacked. Any computer system could be hacked, and there could be great terror that could come from that. It's a national security threat. But, you know, the interesting thing that Tucker brings up is capitalism isn't a religion. Well, it is to Stefan Molyneux. And that's the thing, is, you know, Steph has made his name as the Mr. Free Market guy. And, you know, this sort of ANCAP mindset. And now, you know how you can tell, one of the other videos I have, and I don't agree with the point they lead it home with, but in this I have a video from, I think this YouTube channel is the Progressive Voice. He's like a little Cenk Uygur mini-me. And you know, if I'm agreeing with them, something's really wrong here. Because there isn't much I could ever imagine myself agreeing with them with, but they even made a video about how Steph's whole view on open borders and the free movement of labor and all of that has sort of vanished now that he's gone on this race IQ tear. And so let's first get into Steph's rebuttals to what Tucker said right there. And now that we have the context, which Steph didn't bother to provide, we can easily see all of the misrepresentations.
The challenge that I have undertaken as a public intellectual is to not disappoint you while at the same time remaining in close adherence to the truth and reason and evidence. And
this is, let me just add this other little bit on here, and this is one of my big issues with Stefan Molyneux, is he fancies himself to be a bit of, like, he thinks he's a priest. And what I mean by that is, in religious communities, if you're having a problem with your marriage, you turn to the priest. If you're having a problem with employment, you turn to the priest. If you're having a problem with sinning and addiction or adultery, you turn to the priest. If you have a problem with any of these things, you turn to the priest. The priest is supposed to offer you the truth as per the word of God. Now, if you're any bit familiar with Stefan's YouTube channel, he constantly puts out these videos that are the truth. Like, he thinks he is this divine voice of truth and reason and logic and evidence while using rhetorical, verbal, emotional, manipulative tools in his speaking. That's where the condescension aspect comes in. He, for whatever reason, thinks his philosophy skills make him as this person that anyone could turn to with any issue, and he can offer them the truth to it. And it's really, you know, it's all the videos being the truth, all the call-in stuff. Like, he fancies himself as a know-it-all about everything because of this reason, logic, evidence thing. And, you know, I just think it's amazing how he'll do these videos in an age of fake news and be like, the truth, and just, you know, he would just turn around and cite fake news sources and stuff like that. And I understand in some of those sources you may have to parse through things to actually find little tidbits of truth, But again, just the overall arrogance that this guy fancies himself this sort of priest class that can be turned to for the answers on everything through his divine reason, logic, evidence formula is really obnoxious. The truth I am here to offer as myself in this intellectual class. And that's another part of why he likes going on this whole IQ and, you know, bit tear, because even just to show a little bit of that real quick, I'm going to dead this whole IQ talk right here, because I know people, even friends of mine on Facebook, that I would, you know, they'd pull me into their debates and they'd be arguing with black people and they'd bring up IQ. And here's the thing. Here you have, let's look at the differences first. You know, black IQ here, right in this sliver over here, or I gotta move this onto the other screen. Sorry about that, guys. See right here. Well, we could say that right there, that's probably your prison population. And see this right here, these are your geniuses, your creators, and your people like that. In this middle area right here is the everyman. And that's where most of this falls. This is probably about where Molyneux is, right over in this sliver over here. You know, it's not like he's in this sliver where, you know, there's only white people and black people aren't there. No, Molyneux's over here, and the reason why he likes talking about this stuff is because it makes him feel like he's over here in this upper crust. Even though, realistically, he doesn't have anything special to offer anyone. And if you ask him why he, you know, knows what he knows, well, I've talked to the experts. Yeah, okay. You know, let's just remember the experts have told us over the years that smoking is good for us and all sorts of other crackpot ideas. So your experts can go shove it. So anyway, let's get back into this.
It's a tough act. It's a tough balance. I embrace it with enthusiasm and appreciate all of your support. Thus, I hope you can understand why, to me, it was a little shocking and somewhat disappointing to see the debate between Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro that aired recently. So I'm just going to zoom in on one particular part about...
You know, I really got to say, even for him to just be prefacing this with this sort of, you know, I've undertaken this burden of being an intellectual, and oh me, oh my, I'm oh so smart, and you know, I do this for you and your support, and to, you know, lecture the plebs about how to better themselves with the reason, logic, and evidence which I present. And so when Tucker Carlson, I'm so disappointed, you know, it's like a movie coming out with not enough black people in it, and it's just like, I mean, that's such an SJW, I expect everyone to back my worldview, so if there's someone I agree with about something, I expect them to agree with me about everything, and if they don't, I'm disappointed. Like, arrogance.
Driverless trucks, which I think has within it embedded a huge amount of information and arguments and morality regarding freedom and independence. So, Tucker Carlson, who I generally like, did discharge a B-52's worth of emotional bombast on Ben Shapiro. And it is tough when you are faced with somebody who is absolutely kneeling at the feet of their own populist emotional rhetoric to counter it, because it looks kind of mean. And basically the argument went something like this. So Ben Shapiro asked Tucker Carlson if he, Tucker, would ban, if he was the president, would ban driverless trucks, or if he was in charge of that agency of the government, would he ban driverless trucks? Now, that's a complex question for sure, and there's lots of nuance in it, none of which was addressed by Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson basically jimmied up his sophistry and said, "Are you kidding? Absolutely, I would ban driverless trucks."
Is that what Tucker did? Because I'm pretty sure Tucker did acknowledge that there's nuance there, and, you know, he said, you know, there's reason, safety, whatever, but you know, at the heart of it, I wouldn't want to have the cascading effects of, you know, 10 million families, then them, you know, the ripple effects and all that. So I don't know what Molyneux's talking to. Yeah, he didn't unpack all of it because they only had an hour to do the interview in, but Tucker definitely acknowledged it was there. So, again, here's count one for Stefan misrepresenting what happened in that interview.
Because driving for a living is the single most common job for high school educated men in all 50 states. And this, he said, is the same group whose wages have declined by 11% over the past 30 years. Family will be destroyed. It will be a horror show. And we're going to end up as pure communism if we don't ban driverless trucks. Now,
when did Tucker say we were going to end up as pure communist if we ban driverless trucks? See, I'm pretty sure the remarks about socialism, we could go back, but I think everyone's memory here is long enough to realize that what Tucker started saying is when you have 23-year-olds with a college degree who can't get jobs, who can't buy a house, who can't support families, and then you wonder why socialism starts looking appealing, you can't really be surprised. I'm pretty sure that's what Tucker said, but that's not what Molyneux is saying that Tucker said. See, what Molyneux's doing is Molyneux's building a straw man that he can then combat within the framework of his anarcho-capitalist, capitalism as a religion framework, and then go after that. He's already, right at 2 minutes into this, completely misrepresenting what Tucker's argument was and what he was saying. Tucker was making a very basic point, and the stats back it. You have like half of college kids who are the most privileged out of all of us wanting socialism. But it's because they know with their degrees they're not going to be able to get a decent job with a decent wage and everything like that. It has nothing to do with if we ban driverless cars, we're all going to turn to a bunch of commies. That's not what he said at all.
There was a lot of like, well, the greater good is protecting your citizens, and I just want a country where people can have safe and happy and prosperous lives. And it's like calling yourself an expert doctor or surgeon because you say, I just want people to be healthy. Saying it is a whole lot different from being able to achieve it. And he did also pull the retard.
Again, that's him sort of misrepresenting and emotionally manipulating. Tucker didn't say anything of the such. It's ridiculous. This is, again, the condescension and the ego of Molyneux.
Is saying, well, the free market, I love capitalism, but it shouldn't be a religion where we sacrifice everyone on the altar of abstract ideals like free trade and so on. And Tucker did say, well, this is why half of young people or more like socialism. Because, they can't get ahead, they can't dig themselves out from under student loans, they can't afford to buy houses, let alone cars, and so on. And so he said, yeah, this is why people like socialism, and we've got to fix it by banning new industries. And he also made the case, so communism, he said, happened, this is Tucker Carlson, communism happened because of a lack of management of the transition from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy. And that is... it's patently false.
Patently false, because if you read like the Communist Manifesto and the works of Karl Marx, the whole workers' uprising, and you would find pretty much exactly what Tucker was saying. Yeah. So again, I just sort of scoff at it and brush it off, and let's see what Stefan thinks socialism actually is instead.
Communism happened because a small, dedicated group of revolutionaries seized power. Communism happened, at least in, you could argue around the world, but in general, communism happened in Russia because America entered the First World War. This is...
Wait. Same breath here. Communism happened because of a small group of revolutionaries. America entered the World War... Was America the small group of revolutionaries? I'm so confused. I don't even know what he's saying at this point. Like, I think he's just muddying waters and babbling shit out. This still doesn't address then, so why is 50% of college-age kids asking for this if it's only a small group of revolutionaries that impose it upon? You just see what happens when you just babble shit out, but this is the truth, so I should probably just shut up and just say, Yeah, a small group of revolutionaries imposed Russia, America, World War One, two, whatever, doesn't matter. The truth.
The horrible demonic dominoes you set in motion when you use violent government power in the pursuit of political or geopolitical ends. So the United States ended the First World War, and Germany, otherwise everybody would have fought to its standstill, and everybody would have gone back home, and hopefully the brutal lesson of Western European war in a post-industrial society would have been learned, and there would not have been a Second World War. But instead, America...
What the fuck is he saying? He's on such a tangent right now that it's like, I know what he's saying, but I don't know what the point he's trying to make is. Because he said, America going, Russia, World War II, but World War I, keep fighting till they all go home at a standstill, post-industrial, learn the lesson of what the fuck, Stefan?
Jumped in to the First World War, which caused Germany to panic, and knew that it needed to get Russia off its eastern borders, and therefore...
I'm missing the part where this is all about a small group of revolutionaries imposing.
The German government funded a group of revolutionaries to foment a communist revolution in Russia. So, of course, Wilson entered into the war in order to make the world safe for democracy, and then sunk massive amounts of, well...
See, but what he's overlooking here is, was it Lenin or one of those that said, socialism is just communism, it's all in the same? So what he's basically saying is that communism first of all, Steph was talking about socialism, he wasn't even talking about Tucker. But so he's saying that a small group of Germans went into Russia and imposed communism, but at that point the Germans were socialists, and you had the fascists in Italy, and again, I don't even know what he's saying at this point. He's really acting as if you didn't have like Hitler at a pulpit with like tons of people, and people were all in lockstep with this. They all thought it was a good idea. Again, maybe at the heart of it, you had a small group of people selling this whole idea to the masses. But, I mean, what does he think he's doing with anarcho-capitalism? I mean, realistically, if it picked up, you could say the exact same thing, that a small group of revolutionaries pushed this idea through propaganda onto the rest of everyone until they just bought into it. Like, that's not a debunking of it in any which way. It's yeah, most ideas start with a small group of people then selling it to the rest of them. That's just plain and simple how shit works.
Basically the entire population of Russia, and then Eastern Europe after the Second World War, shortly thereafter China, and then of course Korea, North Korea, North Vietnam.
Wow, this is really, really widespread for just a small group of people imposing it with violence upon everyone. I mean, you'd really think all these countries could just stop this small group of people, Steph. Have you ever thought about the shit that comes out of your mouth? I mean, this is ridiculous.
And Cambodia and Cuba and you name it. All because originally America decided to enter into the First World War, because you don't know what happens when you unleash the dogs of war. So,
wow, that's a leftist argument right there if I've ever heard one. Everything that happened everywhere is the fault of America and war. Wow, how amazing. Steph really is a leftist at heart. I mean, especially with the whole race tear and all of this, it really, really, really seems that way.
So communism happened because of government intervention. Communism happened because the fascism of the draft was imposed upon American men. They were sent to Europe, and Germany then took Russia out of the war by fomenting.
But communism didn't happen in America, but we had a fascist draft? What is he saying?
Revolution rather than fighting on the front. So the idea that, well, you see, it was just a lack of management of the transition from...
America had a fascist draft and went over to fight the socialist countries, but we didn't end up socialist or fascist because... Why, even though we had the fascist draft? Like, what sort of babbling is this?
The agrarian economy to an industrial economy is just a shocking lack of knowledge of history. And, of course...
Like the nonsense you just babbled out that incoherent, everyone's fascist, but we're not the fascist. We fought fascism, and that's what started communism. And God knows what the fuck he's trying to say. And now he's just trying to, after babbling out all that incoherency about America, causes all the ills of the world, now he's just going to say, oh, but it's not, because of, machines and, the workers' uprising, and, we're going to disregard Karl Marx's fucking manifesto and just, let's just build up what works for the rest of the other half hour of my nonsense.
Societies had challenges moving from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy. America and France and Holland and the United Kingdom and Canada, it was all tough. So why didn't they all go communist? Well, that doesn't really explain anything. But it is basically, it's a weird kind of abstract threat.
But are you going to explain it? No, you're not going to explain it. You're not going to explain that, America's the only country with, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and, all that stuff. And there's a reason why all of that socialist, communist stuff happened on one side of the world and not the other. Not the other side of the world that you're actually blaming for it happening onto the other side of the world for. Again, funny how that's the world in which he's set up, where America, Canada, we didn't really go that direction. I mean, I guess Canada is heading that way now very quickly. But, we didn't go that direction, but we're the reason the rest of the world did. I mean, this is who knows what the fuck he thinks he's saying at this point. But, it's just dismiss the transition from agrarian to industrial, so
that
whatever.
People sometimes make when they're in debates. You see, if we allow for driverless trucks in America, we're going to end up grinding.
Do you see his face? Do you see what he's doing right here? Again, this is what really gets under my skin. Reason, logic, evidence, but this is rhetorical, emotional, manipulative tools. Right here. Look at his face. Let's just watch as he's saying these lines, because his viewers, this is him manipulating your emotions to have a feeling of disgust towards what Tucker says. He's using emotions to manipulate, he's using emotional manipulative tools to manipulate your emotions against Tucker's emotional argument. And at least Tucker knows he's making this emotional argument. I don't think Stefan does because of his ego and arrogance.
Sometimes make when they're in debates. You see, if we allow for driverless
trucks in
America,
for driverless,
we're going to end up grinding and being ground into human waste and paste under the boots, heels, and gun butts of a totalitarian communist dictatorship.
And Tucker said that when? When? Or is that your straw man? Oh, that's your straw man. Yeah, because that's not what he said at all. He never said that. This is just some straw man you have concocted to play Rock'em Sock'em Robots with for some views, because you have your panties in a bunch that Tucker isn't in lockstep with your ideology / religion of communism. And you're probably even more pissed that he called it out, saying it's not a religion. But it's your religion, because, you don't believe in real religion. You believe, given enough time, bananas turn to butterflies. Yes, that is actually something Stefan Molyneux believes. It's called evolution. Given enough time, bananas turn to butterflies, because time plus creature A turns to creature B with just time. So anyway.
So do you want your driverless trucks, or do you want your basic freedoms? And of course, this is not a good argument. It's not an argument at all.
And it's not the argument that Tucker put forth whatsoever. So you're talking about it. Why?
And Tucker Carlson was reduced to mealy-mouthed, hallmark-card platitudes like, I just want decent people to live happy lives.
Funny, yeah, I think most people feel that way. So, again, look at that smug fucking face right there. Smug arrogance over something that I think probably 99% of people, except for the segment of people that are considered psycho and sociopaths, feel. But, if you make that face at a sentiment that I am pretty sure the majority of people have, you're probably in the psycho or sociopath category.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know. So he says...
Yeah, I don't even know. Yeah, so... I don't know.
That the driverless trucks would put 10 million men out of work. It would destroy families. It would be a horrible thing for society, and again would propel America towards a communist-style dictatorship.
See, again, he keeps taking it that bridge too far. That's not the claim Tucker made. In fact, Tucker was talking two different things. He's like, how do you go from this where Tucker says college-educated kids with degrees think socialism looks good. Period. End of thought. Separate that for a second. High school educated. Truck driving is the most common job amongst high school educated people. And if we were to take that away, there would be a ripple effect. See, Steph is melding the two into one argument and then building a straw man out of the misrepresentations of that for him to go on his tear about. This is not the points that Tucker made whatsoever. And part of the reason why I decided I needed to do this, besides this guy just being full of shit start to finish, is that I saw Owen Benjamin, who I really respect and consider a great thinker and a very curious and amazing person, really funny too. But he said, that Steph destroyed Tucker's argument. And the whole thing is, Steph definitely destroys something here, but the only thing he destroys is the straw man and misrepresentation that he created. And it's real easy to destroy someone's, argument if you've created the argument to destroy. It's basically the Hegelian dialectic of debate, problem, reaction, solution. You know the solution, you know the point you want to drive home in your video, so you just build up something that you can easily destroy with the point you wanted to make.
So that's kind of hysterical. It's not an argument, of course.
Oh, it's not an argument. Just dismiss it. So, are you going to offer us the truth as to why that wouldn't happen? No, you're just going to babble off some stuff about cotton gins and slavery and all of that, as if it's even comparable, because, people are forced to drive trucks at gunpoint or something like that.
The appeal to disastrous consequences is never an argument. It's like saying, well, you see, we can't end...
So, disastrous consequences never happen? Is that what you're saying, Steph? Maybe we should try socialism, because, if you talk about disastrous consequences, you're hysterical. So, why? Yeah. Look, this is the aggravating thing too, is the ease in which he dismisses these things with this smugness, not an argument thing. You could do to any of his points. It's like if you could clone him and just make him argue himself, they'd both just end up killing each other.
Slavery, because you...
Told you, right? In slavery. Here we go. It's not comparable. Nobody's forced to drive these trucks.
Nobody will pick the food. Nobody will pick the cotton, so we'll all starve to death. And surely, even the slaves would starve to death, and surely the slaves would rather live than die, and surely the slaves would rather remain slaves than starve to death, and you can invent dire consequences for every proposition. And this race for...
You gotta just wonder, for the guy who is the champion of free market capitalism, why, in trying to argue against Tucker's regulations against a aspect of capitalism, why did he have to go bring slavery into it? Because slavery isn't capitalism. It's practically the complete opposite. But he brought it into it to muddy the waters, to misrepresent, because he can't defend it. He has to misrepresent and bring in this completely alien, unrelated aspect of things to make this dire consequences point, because he doesn't have anything substantive to say.
Disaster scenario panic mongering is not how civilized men and women resolve disputes about the use of force in society.
Who was talking about the use of force in society? Oh, yeah, because, in the capitalist religion, any sort of government regulation of any sort is use of force. Although you want borders now, right, Steph? You don't agree with the whole free movement of trade, so now you're just cherry-picking the parts of your ideology that you want to work, right? Con artist.
Slavery is wrong. I don't care what happens after slavery. Slavery is wrong.
And you're talking about slavery. Why? Why exactly?
And giving the government the massive power to throw people in jail who are trying to generate a new industry is wrong and immoral.
Who talked about throwing him in jail? Where's this coming from? Smug face again. Smug face. I mean, this guy's jerking himself. This is him. If rubbing his little bald head was the equivalent of jerking himself off on camera, this is what's going on. He's stroking his own ego.
It's like, well, you see, we don't want a giant authoritarian government controlling the economy. So the way we save ourselves from that is give the giant government the massive power to completely destroy a new industry.
What are you talking about, you fucking idiot? This is why I say, even if you want to look at the IQ charts, Steph isn't even in that upper segment. He's somewhere in that middle, because this is idiocy at work. He's not even dealing with what Tucker said. He is so far into the misrepresentations of giant government force, rhetoric of the anarcho-communist capitalist industries of the force of the government to regulate industries and throw everyone in jail who's trying to progress society in a free market way. Go fuck yourself. What are you doing? What are you saying? I feel like right now I'm like Milo Yiannopoulos watching Jordan Peterson, where I'm just like, I don't get it. What's the appeal of this guy? What is... Oh, arrogance. People who follow this then pick up on this arrogance because, oh, well, Steph's got the reason, logic, and evidence, so if I follow what he says, I can act as smug and condescending as he does because the truth. He's got the truth. I mean, he can't even hold on to the truth of what was in that Tucker clip. I feel like I should play it again, just like in between every other line, and just go, where was that? Where was that Not an argument. You're right, Steph. Not an argument. Not an argument that was presented by anyone but you.
You see, we have to save capitalism by giving government power to control massive sectors of the economy through central planning. You see, that's how we save capitalism.
No, but that's what we have already. I mean, again, you act like you don't need driver's licenses. You act like we don't... this is all judged against his utopian capitalist religious society. And again, forgetting how much of our economy is already regulated, even in regards to borders and everything like that, which he is now for, seemingly. I mean, do we want just any sort of drugs on the market? Do we want... Again, misrepresented.
Wonderful operation. The cancer was cured. Unfortunately, the patient was beheaded. So...
What? The cancer is cured. The patient was beheaded. What are you talking about? You're insane. He is like Jordan Peterson light. Like, it's almost like graduating steps. Like, you go from Stefan Molyneux, and if you're whacked out enough in the head to be on the Molyneux level, you can then graduate to the Peterson level of just complete insanity, where nothing makes sense, but somehow it's against postmodernism, because I don't know.
Now, this idea that new technology is going to throw huge numbers of people out of work and it's a disaster, therefore we have to prevent that new technology, is a terrible and immoral argument. I mean, let me give you an example. So,
immoral how? Where as an atheist do you get your set of morality from? Or have you concocted it?
So at the turn of the last century in America, 90% or so of people were involved in farming. Why? Because farming was largely manual labor, and therefore 90% of the entire economy was composed of people working in the agricultural sector. Now, in America, that's about 2%. Now, that's less than a century, right? About a century and a bit. So that's a huge shift. 90% down to less than 2%. Now,
and I assume that was a really smooth transition, huh?
If we're going to get rid of 88% of the entire economy, not just a sector, the entire economy, we're going to get rid of 88% of people's jobs in the entire economy. If you look at, what a disaster, what a mess, what a butt, right? Now, of course, there were paroxysms and booms and busts and cycles and all of that in the 20th century, but they didn't really have much to do with the free market. They had to do with Federal Reserve control of interest rates and money supply and the odd war, and the fact that Franklin Delano Roosevelt put in massive government programs and huge government controls and massive union reinforcing restrictions on labor mobility during the 13-year Great Depression that culminated in the god-awful 50 million man and woman slaughter of the Second World War.
Again, another tangent, but you notice what happened in that. See, what he did was he said a century ago, 99% of people were working in farms. 100 years from then, only 2%. And then he sort of just is like talking about it like that. And then he's like, well, in between of all that, there were booms and busts, and this happened and that happened. See, but that was because of regulatory control, Roosevelt, all of this stuff. And again, it's funny how he's talking about all of the interventionist stuff that went on in the middle of that as it's strictly negative, but his overall point is going to be, well, we went from 100 years ago to this, and it's good now, but all the stuff in the middle that happened was bad somehow, even though your start to finish is good. But, anything that sort of eased that transition is bad.
So the idea that, you see all of these problems that to do with the free market is false. It's not true at all. So you could say, wow, if you invest...
What are you... Again, I'm confused because like I said, I just crystallized what he said. 100 years ago, everyone's in agriculture. Now they're not. It was a fine transition, but all the stuff that happened in the middle that sort of, manipulated the transition, that was all bad. So what is he saying? The transition would have happened faster, it would have been easier. Not a point. As much as Stefan says not an argument, people should just go to him and say, not a point. Not even relevant to anything.
And farm machinery, you get combine harvesters and so on. By gosh, you are going to put 88% of the men in this country out of work. So we can't allow for farm machinery. See, it's far more. It's far more than what's going to happen with driverless cars. And nobody sits there and says, well, what we need to do is ban farm machinery so everyone has a job, because we understand, those of us who are reasonably well educated in morality, private property, free market.
Morality. Where does this morality keep coming in? I really wonder where this sort of moral framework he keeps referring to comes into play.
The principles of voluntarism, we understand that that would be terrible. It would make everyone poor to ban farm machinery, everybody going back.
What if everyone volunteers to ban it, though? That's the better question. Isn't this why we vote on things? Isn't that voluntarism? Just saying, can't everyone voluntarily choose that we're against this? Like we vote on things? Is that immoral now?
You can mow your grass, if you've got a big lawn, you can mow it with an electric mower, a gas mower, or you can mow it by hand with a hand mower, which I have done, and it's really not very pretty. Or, you see, what you can do is you can get a pair of pinking shears or children's scissors, or
hire a Mexican.
Wow, you're going to be really busy all day. Is it going to be productive? No. So this idea, well, I like machinery, I like the free market, but we have to ban all these driverless cars because people have jobs already. Come on. And it's so sad. It's so ridiculous.
No, what's sad is that when you factor this into a lot of what the stuff Stefan says overall, I don't know how he isn't at this point advocating for eugenics. Because again, he gets on this whole Western world, high IQs, we build the greatest societies, and then his disregard for everyone in this middle here, where he doesn't realize he's in there with them. The ease in which he's just like, the free market will sort him out. It's like the religious thing, let God sort him out. Let the free market sort him out. Like, while people continually, and again, like, the other aggravating part is there's a complete, in his dealing with this straw man, a complete disregard for the globalist, technotronic world order of people who, like when he was talking about the past 100 years and manipulative forces and the Federal Reserve and all that stuff, as if there aren't still players in the game who are trying to build a world without humans. And Stefan somehow thinks when they do their culling and, you know, there's no need for all the worthless eaters, he thinks he's going to still have some worth. As if there's anything he produces that would be necessary. Like the question to boil down and ask it, if you're thinking from the mind of a globalist, is what does Stefan Molyneux have to offer, say, Bill Gates? What does Stefan Molyneux have to offer, say, a Barack Obama or a Rothschild or a Rockefeller? What does Stefan have to offer them? I mean, if he talks about free market capitalism, voluntarism, they will laugh at him. They will laugh at him the same way he laughs at everyone else. So, while he wants to sit here and scoff and, you know, oh, well, the manipulative forces of government and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, well, you're going to be under its boot, and you're just cheering it along. And you don't realize that maybe the forces bringing you the driverless cars and the world without humans are actually the government power, and it's not the free market. Just saying.
Like, if people want to understand how the free market works, fear-mongering is pathetic. And fear-mongering is anti-intellectual. It's a way to attempt to use scary syllables to tickle the fight-or-flight mechanism so people run away from freedom. That's all it is.
But yet, when you go on your government intervention of the boot of the fear of the government and the power of the force of the anti-voluntarist, blah, 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 that's not fear-mongering people into your capitalist religion. This face right here isn't fear-mongering tactics, Steph. You don't engage in this at all. Come on. Go fuck yourself. Start acting like you're better than this. I know you're not, but at least act it.
Cattle prod straight into the fight or flight, straight into the hypothalamus.
I mean, fuck these people. Have you ever heard the rhetoric of any of these ANCAPs talk about anything? Any government law is equated to violence, and then they want to talk about fear-mongering. Really?
Boom. You just run a recoil. It's horrible and it's tragic. See, I notice. You just look in the mirror. If you want to understand what freedom is, just look in the mirror, look at what you want, and look at what you do. So Tucker Carlson, interestingly enough, distributes his show on YouTube, distributes his show on television, and I assume a bunch of other online outlets, maybe even the podcast, I don't know. See, Tucker Carlson doesn't record a show and then rely on...
Oh, and here's another leftist debate tactic. Have you ever talked to a leftist and you're saying how you don't like Obamacare, and then they ask you what kind of insurance you have, and you say, oh, well, I have Obamacare because I'm forced to get it, and they go, gotcha. See, what Steph's trying to do here, Steph's trying to say the free market is the greatest thing in the world ever, acting as if Google and YouTube were brought to you by the free market instead of the CIA, In-Q-Tel, and government funding. So there goes Steph's whole point. Pew, right out the window. YouTube, Google, all this stuff wasn't the free market at work, as much as I hate to say it, as much as I don't like the CIA and In-Q-Tel and all the government funding projects, but that's who brought you YouTube, so your whole point is dead in the water. But Steph's about to try a whole little leftist gotcha tactic of, oh, well, you know, free market, and you use the free market, so therefore, you know, this doesn't work. And it does, because, again, you're misrepresenting, you don't know enough, you're an idiot, whatever.
DVDs or CDs or VHS tapes, for that matter, in order to distribute his show. See, if he didn't use YouTube, if he didn't use television, I forget the television, let's just say YouTube, because people want to see his show, they can't figure it out, how to get it, or they can't get it, they're not by the TV when it happens, so he could sell DVDs, let's say. Now, if he sold a lot of DVDs rather than putting his show on YouTube, what would happen, you see, is a lot of truckers would be required to deliver those DVDs to people's houses. Ooh, that's interesting. So by putting his show on YouTube, Tucker Carlson is denying truckers income, is denying truckers their value. He's driving down the wages of truckers by lowering the demand for their services by putting his stuff out online. But you see, the fact that he is willing to shaft truckers by making his stuff available online doesn't have anything to do with anything.
You're right. So why are you talking about it? Again, we are now 12 minutes into this video, which I'm not even going to go through the whole thing. But do you see how little of actually dealing with Tucker's saying what Tucker said he's doing? We're 12 minutes into it, and he still hasn't even come anywhere close to what's being said. Now he's on some hypothetical, well, Tucker's shafting, truckers by not putting out his show on DVDs, and what sort of nonsense is this?
We should ban driverless trucks because we really care about the truckers. But how much does Tucker Carlson care about the truckers? Well, he will distribute his show online rather than hire truckers. Now,
this is disgusting. Not an argument. Not an argument. I mean, what the fuck? I'm being reduced to fits of rage because I'm trying to understand how this appeals to anyone. How people think they go reason, logic, evidence, and then go, well, Tucker said, because of the impacts of, driverless cars putting people out of work and, this, and that. And then Stefan can be like, yeah, but, Tucker could put his show on DVDs, and then the DVDs would give the truckers another reason to drive places, and because Tucker wants to care about truckers, but because he doesn't put his show on DVDs, he doesn't really care about truckers, so gotcha. What the fuck?
Ben Shapiro, not great. Not great. And he, when you get that level of emotional bombast from someone, you have to meet it with moral outrage. You can't just back off and say, well, but, we got a free market principle and slippery slope and this. And you got to say, no, that's terrible what you're talking about. We're talking about giving the government the power to...
That it already has. Just saying. Giving the government the power that it already has. Just saying.
Guns against the head of people who want to start an industry and throw them in jail if they try to start that industry.
What? What was that about fear-mongering? I don't think those were Tucker's words, that we need a government to put guns at people's heads. But, fear-mongering. Emotional rhetoric from people is so awful.
Market principle and slippery slope. And but you got to say, no, that's terrible what you're talking about. We're talking about giving the government the power.
The power!
Guns against the head of people who want to start an industry and throw them in jail if they try to...
Guns against the heads of people who want to start an industry and throw them into powers, not fear-mongering when I do it. But if someone else does, it is.
Start that industry. That's evil. That's immoral, what you're talking about, Tucker. That's
immoral! Because when I raise my voice and go immoral, that's not emotional. It's logical. It's reasoned. It's evidence.
Appreciation of the use of force against peaceful people who simply want to provide a service in the free market. What you're talking...
The use of force against... I mean, this is like... See, I think what would really actually be a healthy debate in this is the question of where is one person's freedom begin and where does another person's end? See, I'm sure that those truckers would love to drive their trucks into a retirement. But then, if you have a handful of a small group of people, who are computer coders that can code a driverless truck, again, the small group of people then come out and say, well, we've developed this technology, so therefore the masses of you are now rendered useless, basically, because your specialized skill is no longer valued. I mean, it's almost like what Stefan describes as going on in communism, a small group of people imposing something upon the larger group that doesn't want it. Well, that's what's going to happen with this technological revolution. Stefan doesn't seem to understand that because maybe he's just, blocked that whole aspect out of his head because, all amen to capitalism. But that's really what's going on. is his whole argument against communism is about to go on with inside of the free market in a technological way, where a small group of people are going to offer a product or service, and then the larger group of people offering their products and services are rendered no longer needed. And it's the moral thing to care about the smaller group, and that their good can render everyone else's good useless.
Talking about, you see, Tucker. This is the trick that the communists do, is they will try and trick you into fascism as a response to communism. You see, so public control but private ownership of the means of production, that's fascism. Public control and public ownership of the means of production, that's communism. But you see, public control but private ownership of the means of production, that's fascism. So if you want the...
So is he saying that America is already a fascist country? Is that really what he's saying? Because that's what we have. We have government agencies that regulate everything. I mean, Tucker even said, I'd go to the DOT or whoever, the Department of Transportation. There's already an agency in charge of this. It's not like he's talking about setting up a new agency and giving any more power than is already there. It's already there.
Government to control which industries last and which industries don't last and what's allowed and what's not allowed. That's central planning. So they've tricked you into fascism as a response to communism, and therefore both squeeze and destroy the free market.
And yet, if you just went to anyone and you said, yeah, Tucker Carlson, communist, fascist, they'd laugh at you. They would laugh at you. But that is the point, Stefan. This is a straw man that Stefan has built, Tucker Carlson, the commie, in order for him to make this nonsense.
Tucker should know that by now. Good heavens. He's, So, Tucker Carlson says...
What was that? No. Oh.
Sorry. Ben Shapiro says, well, people can move. If there's no jobs where they are, people can move. And, I mean, Tucker Carlson, leaving no emotionally manipulative stone unturned, says, so they must pick up and leave the graves of their fathers and their mothers. And it's like... So, just out of curiosity, if moving for economic opportunity is so terrible, well, then, of course, Tucker Carlson should want completely closed borders, because, you see, the people who come to America are certainly leaving the graves of their fathers and mothers, not even in the same country, but for India and Pakistan and Somalia and Libya and you name it. They're leaving the graves of their fathers. That's terrible. People shouldn't move for economic reasons.
But they're choosing to. They're choosing to. And you are now talking about... See, here's the problem. Is that Stefan, in his religious view of capitalism, and just using the phrase free market, free market, free market, free market, seems to not understand the idea of the free market imposing upon people. Again, what if these people don't want to move? What if they're living somewhere, like, say, Detroit with the auto industry, where you had people employed in shops, living a happy life, everything's going on as they would like it, living their lives, they think it's free, they enjoy it, and then, Ford decides, free market, labor, I'm going to move my plant to China, and now all of these people, because of the free market, have been forced out of work, and if they want to get another job, they may then be forced to move elsewhere. Again, this is imposition done by the free market. But again, in Stefan's worldview, the free market only equals free. It can't impose anything upon anyone. Only government can do that. And Stefan is trying his hardest with every stretch he can pull at to make this fit into the framework that he has preached his whole career.
So close the borders, no immigration.
What is he talking about
I don't know,
now?
maybe yes, but I doubt it. Leave the graves of their fathers. So, just out of curiosity.
And just the scoffing and the laughing. Again, that's all emotional. Laughing is an emotional response. It's not a logical response. It's not an evidentiary response. It's not a reasoned response. It's an emotional one. You laugh because you feel as if something's funny. You smile because of feelings and emotions. But, emotion in Stefan's...
See, I looked up Tucker Carlson. See, he thinks it's just horrifying, you see, that people might want to move for the sake of economic.
No, he's not talking about people wanting to move. He's talking about people being forced to move because the movements and of a small group of capitalists have forced them out of work. Again, he's missing this whole forced aspect where it's like, okay, well, now your skills have been, wiped off the map of worth, and you're now forced, if you want to provide for your family, to move. They're not just saying, oh, well, my trucking job, I didn't really want to wake up for it on Tuesday, so now I'm glad I'm unemployed because I've actually wanted to move to Silicon Valley because deep inside I always wanted to be a computer programmer with my high school education instead of a truck driver. What the fuck is Stefan talking about? This is goddamn ridiculous.
Opportunity, because they will leave the aforementioned graves of their fathers and their mothers. So Tucker Carlson, interestingly enough, has constantly moved to pursue job opportunities as
another leftist gotcha. He's misrepresented and is now trying another leftist gotcha with the smug, condescending look on his face.
And as a columnist and so on. So I don't even know,
I don't even know, because it's not like Tucker was ever forced to move because news broadcasting wasn't a viable career where he was anymore, so then he was forced to move because his career was offered elsewhere. It's not like we still have newscasters, right? The news is just data implants downloaded into us, right? No, is this another complete misrepresentation? Is that why you're covering your face in shame? Because deep down inside you are so full of shit.
How do you explain these things? Look in the mirror. See what you're doing. And that probably...
Look in the mirror. This isn't emotional condescension. This isn't me trying to emotionally get my audience riled up to believe the free market is a religious institution and we should all bow down. This isn't me misrepresenting anything. I promise. Reason, logic, evidence. Truth. The truth.
It has a lot to do with what other people wouldn't mind doing either. So you see, it's fine for Tucker Carlson to move to pursue economic opportunities, but for other people, it's uprooting them from their deeply held and foundational communities, and they're spitting and shitting on the graves of their mothers and their fathers, and it's like, come on, man, look in the mirror! You moved to pursue economic opportunities!
Is this fear-mongering too? I'm pretty sure this is more fear-mongering, and this is just absolutely ridiculous. It makes no sense whatsoever. He's comparing apples to oranges and smug condescension and everything else.
Nothing wrong with other people doing it. So, this idea that if you have a bunch of people who are all suddenly, quote, out of work, what are you going to do with them? How could this possibly be handled? But it has been handled in the past. So let's look at the end of the Second World War. So, at the end of the Second World War, the United States had more than 12 million men and, brackets, women, in the armed forces. So 12 million men. And of course, think of all of the other men and, bracket, women who were involved in supplying the armed forces and this, that, and the other, right? So there are millions and millions, tens of millions of people either directly in the armed forces or in industries working to supply the armed forces in the Second World War. Tens of millions of people. 7.6 million of the men were stationed abroad. So a funny thing happened. At the end of the Second World War, you had tens of millions of people whose jobs evaporated, either directly as soldiers or indirectly in supplying the military-industrial complex. Tens of millions of men and a couple of women, all their jobs evaporated. Now, there was all of these plans. All of these plans say, oh, we got to have this big, giant government agency to match up people returning home from the war to their job opportunities and make sure that everyone, right? Chaos, panic, nastiness, right? People got jobs like that. The prosperity of the 50s came out of the relative free market that occurred
Relative
in
free
the 40s,
market?
mid to late 40s, after the end of the Second World War. By the time they had even thought about getting some plans going with the government job resettlement program, or whatever the hell it was called, everyone had come home and found jobs already. Tens of millions of people whose jobs completely vanished, and there was virtually no transitional difficulty. So that's kind of important. There is a mess in the American economy, as there is in the West. And the mess has to do with a whole bunch of things, which I'll just touch on very briefly here. And one more government program called banning driverless trucks is not going to solve these problems. It's only going to make them worse. It's a Band-Aid over a sucking chest wound. So first of all, 10 million men, after 12 years of government education, are only fit to turn wheels and look at lines on a road. I know, there's more to it than that. But, you know, this is all they're fit for. So the fact that there are all these terrible government schools out there means that these people come out and they're really only fit to sit and drive. So that's pretty terrible. If you improve government schools, then people will be able to think and reason, and they'll be better, and then they won't want jobs as truckers, and it really won't matter. So that's one thing that could be done. The welfare state and unemployment insurance has people frozen in time, right? So you know what happens. You lose your job in a small town, and you just sit around until your unemployment insurance runs out, and then you try and figure out something else to do. Maybe you go on welfare if you're a woman. Maybe you get knocked up and raise your kids without a father to make sure you get child benefits and so on. But everyone's got kind of stuck. It is kind of funny to me as well that Tucker Carlson says, you will leave the grave of your fathers to the right? Well, America, of course, was founded by people who left the grave of their fathers and traveled across an entirely exquisitely dangerous and disease-infected crossing across the Atlantic to get to America. But you see now, people can't move from Idaho to Kansas because, I don't know, the ghosts of their parents follow I don't know. So there is that mess. Of course, we have paid a lot of irresponsible people to have children through the welfare state, and irresponsibility, lack of conscientiousness.
All right, I'm going to end this here because now he's just going off on tangents about all of his other capitalism saves the world stuff. And not as if I don't agree with some of the aspects of it, but again, it's just him. He never dealt with Tucker's argument, and now it's just, well, if, we had the free market utopia, this wouldn't even be suggested because reason, logic, evidence, even though I talk all day about how IQ is genetic and a white-only, whatever, but Asians, so I'm not a racist. Nonsense. So anyway, here's the little bit I want to put forth.
All right, so we're going to be talking about...
Let's just go right to the clips. Okay, so 2007, here we go.
Dreading your lives.
And now there'll be some you'll hear grade A fear-mongering in this. Listen to this. Starts out with the condescending laugh.
Mexicans, undocumented, and vote. Mexicans, they're your enemy, please. This is so non-empirical, it's ridiculous. I don't even know where to begin. It's such a load of crap. To be worried about immigrants? Was it a bunch of wetbacks who were out there jabbering about WMDs at the UN? No. Is
Apples
it the
and
Chinese
oranges.
community? Or the Muslim community that is clamoring for the Patriot Act? No.
Apples and oranges.
It's pretty much people like you, for the most part. If you're a minority listening to this, yo, brother, perhaps you can teach me how to dance. But it's the whiteys. It's the whiteys from Harvard.
The whiteys from Harvard?
Dreading your lives.
The high
With troops
IQs?
stationed all over the world.
The high IQ
Who
people!
are funding the government, who are
They're the
financing
problem?
the planet.
The high IQs are the
state
problem?
prison planet.
The people you're not
whiteys.
apologizing for? No guilt?
And some Jews.
No guilt, Stefan?
Mexican illegals that are taking away your frickin' rights.
Let me tell you, compared to the shit that comes out of this guy's mouth nowadays, this is gold. This is gold. My ancestors were driven out of Africa and struggled to survive winter and hunger. Over thousands of years, they became smarter and wiser through suffering. First off, where is it? Is the out of Africa theory out? Yeah, out of Africa is done. So again, his whole premise for that about out of Africa didn't come from Africa. Nonsense. Now the Africans say we're privileged and thieves. No, suffering made us. No more guilt. For those who doubt my knowledge of race and IQ and human intelligence, here's a series of 18 interviews with accredited experts. First off, check out Colbert Report Colbert it's don't I'm not talking about Stephen Colbert. It's the other guy on YouTube. Really good video about how the oil oligarchies have set up like the medical industries and all that. And if you have a handful of scumbags who want to start a revolution, like the way Stefan describes communists, and they're the ones that set up the accrediting program, and in order to be accredited, you have to be accredited in bullshit. Well, then you citing the accredited experts mean absolutely nothing. And this is called the appeal to authority fallacy. It is an error in reasoning, reason, logic, evidence, reasoning, which occurs when someone adopts a position that they believe a position is affirmed by a person they believe to be an authority. So there's Stefan's use of reason, logic, and evidence right there. I've talked to the experts. They're accredited. All 18 of them. Nonsense. But, again, real funny that in 2007, Stefan was on some, it's the whiteys. The whiteys are ruining the world. You're worried about Mexicans, and now he's on this whole whites are the greatest, white builds the greatest societies, race, IQ, Mexicans, no illegals, blah, blah, blah. I mean, funny how the tune has changed over the times, but it's the same condescension. That's my real issue, the arrogance of it.
The other way that I'd like to sort of approach this question, if you will indulge me for a few more minutes, is to picture empathy, right? Empathy is really at the root of a good number of principles, especially ethical or moral principles.
Except when you're talking about truck drivers. Just remember that. Empathy's good, except for the truck drivers.
And I'd like you to think about not how you look to immigrants or anything like that. I'd like you to imagine that you're born in Mexico. I'd like you to imagine that you're born in Mexico. Because being born in America is just a coincidence. Doesn't make you right, doesn't make you valuable, doesn't make you better, doesn't make you moral.
Not what he's saying nowadays.
Doesn't make any of those damn things. It's just a freaking coincidence. And you can't claim any rights based on where your mother happened to frickin' squat and drop. I mean, imagine if she'd been kidnapped and dropped off in Mexico just before you were born. I guess you'd be naturalized U.S., but whatever situation you could come up with, you happen to be born in Mexico. Maybe your mom donated some eggs to an infertile Mexican woman, and boom, your dad was down, got drunk, and you happen to be born in Mexico. Now, in Mexico, the standard of living is wretched. Mexico was the first communist country in the history of the world at the turn of the 20th century, and its standard of living has remained mostly unchanged for about 100 years. Now, I'd like you to picture knowing that there's no real difference between Mexicans and everybody else on the planet.
Of course, the people who've come to America legally, they're the ones most suffering from illegal immigration, and it is certainly my hope that their voice will prevail in their preferences, and the fragile edifice of Western empiricism, self-criticism, and voting above your own ethnic interest is going to prevail. Without it, we are not going to turn Mexico into America. We're going to turn America into Mexico, and a great and powerful light in the world will go out. And of course, and we'll get into, there's this myth that illegal immigrants can't get welfare and can't vote and so on. This is not true. These are just lies put out by the left
really, because a few years ago you were laughing at the idea. I mean, it was just it was a knee slapper. It was hysterical, Stefan.
By a lot of libertarian outlets as well.
A lot of libertarian, like Free Domain Radio, maybe just a little bit.
libertarians are like, well, freedom of movement and so on. Sure, in an
you were like, freedom of movement.
Ideal world.
In an ideal world, that was you.
And none of this coercive welfare, but private charities and so on. It'd be wonderful to let everybody move wherever they wanted. That was the case in the 19th century. There was no such thing as a passport till the early part of the 20th century. You could just move.
Isn't it funny how he just sort of effortlessly shifts between his fantasy land in order to scoff at other people, and then whenever it's ideal and opportunistic, well, then he's back down to reality, and he knows the world we're actually in. Like, it's really funny how he just sort of shifts between the two based on whichever position he wants to take at the time. Are we in reality? Are we in Candyland? Which points should I argue from? Because reason, logic, evidence lets me go from either.
And go wherever you wanted. That's a wonderful thing, but that ain't the world we're living in right now.
Yeah, and so also
So, there's that little clip. Now, one of the other things I think is really interesting and funny is because, when Stefan was just having that straight, cold-hearted response and forgetting how much he used to cherish empathy towards the truckers, I remembered this. And it sort of fits with me comparing him to leftists in a lot of his gotchas and things like that. There's this debate between Ann Coulter and Anna Kasparian. And Anna Kasparian just takes this very cold-hearted capitalist attitude towards black people not being able to get jobs because they don't speak Spanish. So let's check this out. Because Stefan could basically get a seat on the Young Turks at this point, and he'd fit right in. Maybe it's 44 minutes into it? Yeah, here we go. See? You could have Stefan right on the Young Turks with Anna saying, you don't know how to drive driverless cars? You could just, pick yourself up by the bootstraps, get a new job. It's leave your family. You could move somewhere else. It's whatever. Just dismiss him, laugh at him, condescend. I mean, he's right there with the Young Turks as far as attitude and their responses. So anyway, I got a holiday party I got to start getting ready for and all that. So I'm going to wrap this up here. It's already longer than I planned. So Paul and I should be back next week to do our yearly wrap-up. So I hope everyone enjoyed. And I assume I'm going to get a little bit of hate on this video from Stefan fans, but I'm sorry. I think if Stefan was as much of a big boy as he makes himself out to be, he would appreciate the criticism. So have a good one, everyone.